Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Valley Sports Rewind. I'm Mike Cannici, and I'm very honored today. I have one of the greats of Derby High School sports. He's also a former teammate of mine, classmate, so it's a real honor, Mr. Otis Jemal Baskins. And Jemal, I want to thank you for coming on today.
Nope, thank you for having me.
You know, Jemal, you had quite the career at Derby. You were a three-sport player. How did your love for sports begin, though? Was it like at a young age, like around maybe 6 or 7?
It was at a young age. I remember I originally grew up in Ansonia, and then we moved to Derby.
Right.
And I never really thought about sports. We just kind of played with the neighborhood kids, and a couple of things. We played football, obviously, played in the streets, and basketball. So that's when it kind of started. But I didn't really have any type of I want to say passion, but I didn't have any type of direction in terms of, am I going to play some type of organized sport?
Right. Now, how old would you say you were when you moved to Derby, if you had to guess?
If I had to guess, I want to say 12.
12. And,
Yes.
you know, one of the things that was unique about Derby, especially the west side of Derby, is
Yes.
you guys used to play all different games. I think there was a game called City Chase.
City Chase, yeah.
Yeah, that everybody played, and that was a lot of fun. I mean,
was
a
a
lot
lot
of
of fun.
people enjoyed playing that. So you kind of came to Derby at a time where, you know, it was just fun to be a kid.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, some of my best memories were playing from, City Chase, so
Right.
I liked it.
Yeah, I'm sure with guys like James Ferguson,
Yes.
Jerry Robinson, all those guys.
All my neighbors.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. When did the love for football first come out for you? Because you said, again, you didn't come to Derby till you were 12, so I would imagine you were probably in 6th grade when you moved
Yes.
to Derby. So
Yes.
when would you say you started wanting to play football?
Well, still, I really didn't know. We would play, say, on the street. We would also play at the cemetery on the bald spot. We
Right.
would play all the time. And then I met this guy, Mascola. He
Right.
came down. He said, "You guys want to play?" And I'm like, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if my mother would let me. So he brought me up to practice one day, and I said, I think I could do this. And then that first day of practice, that's when I was like, okay, this is what I kind of want to do right now.
Right. So you really didn't start to play till you moved to Derby. So
Yes.
basically, you didn't start playing till you're 12. And how would you say your first year of Pop Warner was? Did you like it? Was it kind of hard to get used to? What would you say?
It was terrible. I played for the midgets. I played 2 years for the midgets because I was always too big.
Right.
But what was I? I was a running back, and we didn't win many games. I just remember getting hit all the time. I don't know why I kept coming back, but I kept coming back. So my first year was tough. I think in 2 years, I think I scored 2 touchdowns.
Right. But I do believe you did get a lot of playing time that first year, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I got a lot of playing time. So
Right. And did you play both sides of the ball, or was it mainly running back?
it was mainly running back at that time.
You know what's interesting about Pop Warner? High school, you learn a lot more as far as X's and O's, but in Pop Warner, that's really where the hitting happens. And I mean, you're
Yes.
hitting all the time. What was the hitting like in Pop Warner? You guys probably did meat choppers, bowl in the ring, all that stuff.
Oh, that was great. We used to get the little skulls on our helmet to see who hit
Right.
the hardest. So it was all about, I don't know if it was about playing for me. It was about how many skulls I can get. So,
Right. Did you start to get that feel, though, for what Derby football was? I mean, Derby football was a big thing in the town, and, the coaches at a young age preach it to these kids. Did you kind of have an idea about the history after that first year?
after that first year, I kind of had a really good idea. We started going to the high school football games, and part of going to practice and then going down the hill and
Right.
watching the seniors and the juniors play. That was my highlight in terms of, okay, I want to be a part of this, and that's when I started to get that feeling.
Right. Now, I know you didn't play basketball right away, but were you a fan of basketball? I mean, did you like playing it, just, pickup games and stuff like that?
I love playing pickup games, and for me, it was just another thing for me to do. I just wanted to keep busy.
Right.
I came to Derby at a like you said, at a good time to be a kid.
Right.
But I also had some struggles as a kid too, as far as growing up in poverty. So my outlet was playing sports and playing as many sports as I can. So football, basketball, and track was the 3 sports I played. So
Right. You talked about Jim Mascola a little bit.
Yes.
Guy was very good about, doing the Pop Warner program. He got a
Yes.
lot of kids into it. Just talk about Jim Mascola, what he meant to you as a coach and, getting you to play because...
He convinced my mother to let me play because my mother did not want me to play. She didn't want me
Right.
to get hurt. And we didn't have a lot of money. So he paid whatever fees I needed to pay, whether it was to get physicals,
Right.
Any type of equipment, that the actual team didn't provide, whether it was cleats,
Right.
rides to games, rides to practice. It was just a really good feeling to have somebody in your corner when you really didn't have anything else. So he was a great guy. Definitely a great guy.
Yeah, definitely a great man. What would you say was your biggest challenge that first year? Like, was it, being able to go through the holes when you're carrying the ball, blocking, knowing your assignments? What would you say the toughest thing was?
I want to say it was knowing my assignments, like
Yeah.
knowing who I was supposed to block. It was easy to run.
Right.
But knowing who I was supposed to pick up in terms of blocking, that's what it was, the difficult part.
Right. So now you get to 8th grade. It's your second year. You're playing on the midgets.
Yeah.
And, two of the best backs that Derby had, in the 90s, you had Jason Palmieri, you had
Yes.
John Ann Roman, but you also had yourself and Joe Cabral, who were very good. And that year you got to play with Joe Cabral. So just talk about that second year of Pop Warner and you two being the main runners for that team.
Well, Joe really taught me how to run and run somebody over and to hit people. And I
Right.
actually learned a lot from him. We were pairs, but I learned a lot from him. And I always wanted to be like him because he just had that. He grew up in Derby,
Right,
so
yeah.
he had that from
And he had a lot of experience.
a lot of experience
Yeah.
playing. So I learned a lot from him in terms of like running the ball and playing with that passion and how to transfer that onto the field as far as what you feel inside.
Right. And that second year, how would you say? I mean, you got a lot better the second year. I think you
Yes.
were, you had quite a few touchdowns.
Yes.
I mean, did you feel confident going into your freshman year that you were going to be ready for high school?
I wasn't too sure because we had a shaky season
Right.
that second year still, and I was still learning the game, and I didn't know what that next level was going to be like. So I was always big as a midget, but I wasn't too sure how big I was going to be when I turned a freshman. So
Right.
I was a little nervous.
But the one thing you definitely said you were going to play the next year, right?
Yes.
That was no question.
There was no question.
Right.
This is what I wanted to do. Like I said, it was another thing for me to do.
Right. So now, 8th grade also would be the first year you played organized basketball. If I remember,
Yes.
you tried out for the freshman team.
Yes.
Derby didn't have an upper school team.
Yes.
You make the freshman team. I mean, how did that feel for you being a first-year player, being able to make the team?
It was great. It was something new again. I had to learn the game of basketball because I only knew street ball.
Right.
So it was a way for me to make friends. It was a way for me to get away, like I said.
Right.
So it was great. So
Now, obviously, you loved football, but did you
Yes.
like basketball a lot that first year? I mean, were you developing a love for it?
I was developing a love for it. I didn't know if I really had the skill for it,
Right.
but I just had a passion to win. So and just to be a competitor.
Right. And I believe that first year you played for Mo Monahan and
Yes.
Jocko Viet.
Yes, those guys were great. I mean, because Mo, didn't he coach football? He coached Pop Warner as well,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he used to bring his truck, and the
Right.
kids used to raid his truck. He used to,
yeah. Give you stuff after
give us snacks
practice.
after practice, and
Yeah.
same thing with going to basketball practice. So it was more the relationships that I built with all these people,
Right.
that
And
I
also,
continue playing all these different sports.
that basketball team too, it's a long time ago, so it's hard to always remember everything.
Yes.
But that team had a good year, that freshman team. I think they were 500.
Oh, really?
You had some good players, Mike Paquet,
Yes.
Eddie McManus. You also had Joe Cabral, Joe
Yes.
Leza, who
Yes,
played.
that's
So, I
right.
mean, it was a very good team. And in basketball, that's kind of unheard of in Derby. But,
Yes.
they did have a lot of talent that first
We
year.
did have a lot of talent.
Right.
Now I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it was, it's far back, so it's hard to remember.
Mm-hmm.
So now, one of the rumors I always heard, and you can confirm it today, is you were considering going to Emmett O'Brien. You weren't going to go to Derby High. Is that true or false?
That was, like I said, I got into programs based on I lived in poverty, so I got into a lot of different programs. One of the
Right.
programs was Team.
Yes.
Team had a program over the summertime where you got to do different things. So I went to Emmett O'Brien over the summertime to do a woodworking program.
Right.
And I met this teacher, and he was trying to convince me to come to Emmett O'Brien, and I had no, I wasn't going.
Right.
And one of the things he was saying, he said, why you want to go to Derby? I said, I want to play football. And he told me that I'll never forget. He's like, well, you're too small. And I laughed at him. And I walked away. And I'll never forget that day that, like, when somebody tell you can't do something,
Right.
just laugh at him. And I'll never forget. I don't remember his name, but he had curly hair. He wore glasses. And,
It's
Yeah.
probably motivated you.
oh, 100%.
Right. Now, you talked about being in programs. I mean, what other programs were you in as a kid besides team? Were you a member of the Boys and Girls Club and stuff like that?
Yes, I was a member of Boys and Girls Club. I took karate. I took anything I could take that was free.
Right.
So,
and
yeah.
I definitely think it helped you as far as, it got you involved in stuff,
Yes.
Because the worst thing is when kids are on the streets too much.
Yes.
You tend to get in trouble just because, you got
Exactly.
nothing to do. So,
And I had a lot of friends that on both sides. I grew up in Ansonia.
Right.
I finally come to Derby, so I had friends in different towns. Had friends in Shelton, and so I either had athletes or kids who were just on the corner getting in trouble.
Right. So now the summer of '91 comes. You're about to be a freshman,
Okay.
and I think Tom D'Onofrio was your freshman coach.
Yes.
So talk about, the freshman team. It's a whole new ballgame now because it's no longer Pop Warner. You're basically being introduced to Derby's system and how they
Yes.
want to run things. That freshman team had a good year. Talk about that freshman year a little bit.
We had a great year. I remember the first game somewhat.
Right.
The one good thing that I did, I think it was like the first play. I think we ran a G to the left side,
Right.
left tackle, and left guard. And I think I ran about maybe 30, 40-yard run, and I thought I scored, but the guy pushed me in the back, and I went out of bounds.
Right.
So they marked me down, I want to say, at the 20, 25, and then the next play I actually scored. And I was like, wow, I can do this because I actually have people blocking for me. It
Right.
wasn't like that in Pop Warner. So I didn't know what it was like to actually run through a hole
Right.
and to run the distance. So that was my first experience, and that's when I was like, yes, I could. Maybe I'm kind of good. So,
Right. You talk about the line. There was a lot of talent on that line. You had Mike Pride, Joey Leza, Robbie Anaselli.
Yes.
I think John Burdacki was the tight end.
Yes.
And you also had the other guard, I want to say, is Mike Wallington. I could be
Yes.
wrong. And
Yes.
you even had Jeff Gregorio. He'd end up going to Ansonia, but he also
Yes.
played on that team.
Yes, he
so
did.
You and Joe had a lot of holes that were wide open
These
for you.
guys, they did a heck of a job. I mean, all my yards. I can remember running behind Joe, just holding his belt
Right.
and pushing him where I needed him to go, and I
Right.
would just go the opposite way.
Right. And then, the other thing is, too, he'd end up being the quarterback down the road. But at the time, Chris Ruther was the quarterback, and you had Steve Tilkey as the receiver. And
Yes.
people forget this. Steve Tilkey was an unbelievable receiver. He
Yes,
was the
he
type
was.
of kid that if you threw the ball and you overthrew it, he would come to the ball and catch
Yes.
it. I mean, very underrated receiver.
Yes, very.
That was a very
I was kind of disappointed when he became a quarterback. I was like, he's such a great receiver.
Yeah, could have utilized them better
Yes.
that way. But, one game I look back to on that freshman season, you mentioned like the Brantford game, the first game, you got
Yes.
that 40-yard run, but you were kind of not getting the runs you liked. And then the Cheshire game, you just broke out that game. You had like 3 touchdowns. And, Cheshire was starting to get good then. So, I mean, I know it's hard for you to remember everything.
Yeah, it's
but,
hard to remember.
I mean, just talk about week in and week out playing big teams like that. It takes its toll a little bit, doesn't it?
Yes, it takes its toll, but I had the coaching staff.
Right.
They pushed you to the next level. I can remember always being nervous before every game.
Yeah.
I was ready to vomit every single game until I ran that first play.
Right.
And then after that, it was just all downhill from there.
Right. One thing about freshman ball, too, whether it's football or basketball, it's really that year where you also get to have fun because you're not playing with the older kids yet. It's kind of your class and you're kind of together with your friends.
Yes.
So it is a lot of fun. It's fun going to practice. It's fun, if you win and you're on the ride home from the buses.
Yes.
So, kids don't realize it at the time, but it's really one of the most enjoyable years.
Yes, it was. It definitely was.
Right. So now let's get into the basketball season a little bit.
Okay.
I think you played for Danny Blackwell that freshman year.
Yes.
Team only won 4 games, but you know what? That team had a lot of heart. I mean, they were in every game, a lot of games. Talk to me about basketball. What do you think? Why do you think Derby was not able to be successful in basketball? What do you think the problem was?
We didn't have enough kids. All of the kids, they played 2 or 3 sports.
Right.
So it was tough to. You look at nowadays, kids, they have the time to just play,
Yeah.
or enough kids just to play one sport, and then they dedicate the rest of their off season to that one sport.
Right.
I mean, I wish I could have dedicated all of my off season to just football, but I needed to do other things.
Right.
So
I think the other thing, too, is, you talk about today. For football, you have all these passing leagues. For basketball,
Yes.
you have all these AAU
Exactly.
leagues. Baseball, the same thing. So, and even, as far as cross country and stuff, you have all these running clubs.
Yes.
Where when you were a kid, those things weren't offered.
no, they weren't
to you.
offered, and I'm thankful that for today for the this generation for like my son and my nephew who's playing D1 basketball. They had all these extra AAU teams. They're playing for different sponsors, whether it's Adidas, Under Armour, Nike.
Yeah, so I mean, they have so much more that
in football they're doing the same thing. So it's great. It's great to see that. I wish they had it when we were kids.
Right. I mean, the weight rooms they have now are unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
And back then, I mean, the weight room was small at Derby, so you didn't really have a lot of room. It wasn't easy. Now, talk about that basketball season as far as your first year, you were kind of like a reserve. Probably didn't get as much playing time. But the second season, you had to be one of the guys. You had to step up. Yes. How would you evaluate that second season of freshman ball for you in your game?
For me in my game, I would say I was really trying to figure out what type of player I was. Was I a scorer? Was I a defensive player? Was I a rebounder? And I was trying to be a scorer that year because that was the year of the Bulls and and things like that. So I was motivated.
And you were a big Michael Jordan fan.
Yes,
correct?
I was.
Yeah.
So of course everybody wants to be like Mike. So I thought I was an offensive player. Come to find out later, no, I was a defensive player just because of that football mentality. So I ended up becoming a better defensive player than an offensive player.
Right. Would you say, though, after that second year, you were starting to love basketball?
Yes,
even though football is always your number one.
And that was another sport because these sports, they cost money. So we had coaches. Well, I know I had coaches, buying me sneakers, buying me practice clothes.
Right.
Because I just didn't have it. So that kept me going as well, too. So I okay, these people, they believe in me. So I'm going to show up and give it my all. So.
Right. And you definitely did. So now let's fast forward to the spring. You decide freshman year to go out for track.
Yes.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you did the 100 hurdles?
I did the 100 hurdles, which I shouldn't have done. I'm short. I did the 100, 200,
and you also did one of the relay races.
300 hurdles. I did a 4x4 and long jump.
Yeah. Track, it's tricky because it's the sport where you could relax on the bus rides. Basically, you're trying to do good for yourself. It's not so much a team thing.
Exactly.
Where, football and basketball are. You don't want to let the team down. But this sport is more individual because you just don't get the numbers.
Yes. We didn't have enough kids to get those team points anyway, so you had to focus on those numbers.
But you had a pretty good track career. Talk about track, and was it more for you to try to get ready for football, get quicker for football, or did you just think you could be good at it? And
no, because I just wanted to get better at football.
Right.
That was the whole focus: how to run faster, how to be explosive. So I did things like long jump, the 100-meter hurdles, the 110 hurdles.
Right.
And I've competed. I didn't end up last,
right.
But I wasn't first either.
Just explain to somebody who might be listening that wants to try the 100 hurdles, what is the most challenging thing about it? Because I'll tell you right now, I could never do it. I mean, I would fall after the second one. So,
well, you have to be explosive. The challenge is taking what steps you're going to take in between each hurdle. Like Mike Paquet, he had to take 3 steps.
Right.
I had to take 5. So it was either 3 or 5, if I remember correctly. And so that was the challenging part of getting that rhythm down between each hurdle.
Right.
And they're obviously high hurdles. So.
Right. So what would you, out of all the ones you competed in, what would you say was your favorite one? Would you say the 200 maybe, or?
200 was tough.
Yeah.
Even though it was grueling, the 300 hurdles I actually liked.
Did you? Yeah.
Yes, because I always had the guts to finish at the end, and that was a hard race. It was a really hard race, but I did well at that. The 100 meters, just during my era, there were some fast kids.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I was running against Kyle McIntosh.
Shelton had some great runners, too.
These guys were
Ronnie
unbelievable.
Ranger, I think.
Yes.
Kevin Ranger, yeah.
You couldn't compete with those. Those guys were running in the low 11s. I was running maybe 11.9, 12.1.
Right.
So
probably made you do better, though, going against them. It helps your time.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, because you're trying to keep up with them.
And I was a lot bigger than those guys in terms of at that high school weight.
Right. So. Now, did you qualify your first year? Or?
I did. I qualified long jump my first year.
Oh, nice.
I want to say I jumped like 18 and a half.
Right.
But we didn't really have the coaches for track, even though we had coaches that coached multiple sports. I think Jadek coached 1 year.
Yeah, he was head coach as time went on. I think he had Gene Warren your first year. Yes. And I think Jadek was
and we really didn't have any long jump specialists or people that knew how to teach you how to jump, so I kind of just learned on the fly. And so for me to do my first jump and I qualified, But unfortunately, by the time we got to the States, I think I pulled my hip, and I couldn't compete. So I fell right into the dirt, ate some dirt.
So, track season comes to an end. Then you got to get right into spring practice. Now, let me ask you, you're not the type of kid that seems nervous, but you're a sophomore, and you're going to practice for the first time, and you got seniors. And Derby had come off a losing season, and Coach Charlie DeCenzo, he said right from the beginning, I am not having this again. We are going to win. Were you nervous that first day of Springs, or how were you?
I was excited because we came off a good freshman year.
Right.
And I remember meeting Charlie for the first time.
Right.
Joe and I were in his class. He taught English, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And we were goofing around, and we figured, this guy, he's our coach. He's going to be our coach the next year. And after class, let's just say he set us straight.
Right.
And so I was excited to play for the guy because I knew he was serious.
Right.
Our sophomore year, I don't know what year that makes. Whose senior year was that?
That would be Dave Van Roman's senior year. Yes.
That was my best year in terms of I loved playing that year.
Right.
Even though we didn't play much, we practiced.
I always said that the practices were fun to go to that year.
It wasn't just fun. Our practices were games because our freshman team or sophomore team was so good that we challenged our seniors every single practice. I know you remember.
Right. Yeah. And it was a very emotional year.
It was a very emotional year. Yeah. It was a tough year for them. But I think we made them better.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So.
One of the things, you're not going to remember this, but the next day in the Evening Sentinel, the old Evening Sentinel, they took a photo of the first day of spring practice, and you mentioned Charlie, and it's Charlie going over a drill with you. So,
oh, really?
It's funny you brought Charlie up because in the Sentinel, you were in the paper with him the next day. He's going over a drill.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's too funny.
So that was pretty neat to see. But you get into that sophomore year, and again, you played a lot of JV that year, and you had a great year because Joe Cabral really didn't play a lot of JV that year because. No. Mike Massey got hurt, and Joe had to take over at safety for Mike Massey. So you were kind of the man. You were the running back.
Yes.
And I think John Oko was the JV coach at the time.
Yes.
But just talk about your sophomore year, being on that team and playing for guys like Coach Oko, Coach Alu, Coach DeCenzo. Cool. I think Ronnie Leno even came by that point.
Yes, by that time I met Ronnie.
Right.
And like each year I kind of met somebody else when it came to Pop Warner, and then freshman year, and then now I meet Ronnie.
Right.
And he just took me to a whole new level of hard work.
Right.
And he appreciated the person that I was in terms of he knew my mother, he knew my upbringing, he knew where I came.
Ronnie
he was one of the few people.
Everybody.
Yeah, he was one of the few people that knew everything I was going through personally, education-wise, and for sports as well. So he was always my driving force after like sophomore year, and. That year, as a sophomore, I don't remember too many of the sophomore games. I remember more of the practices because we played so hard during the practices.
One of the practices you bring up, I'm going to bring it up, or you're bringing up practices, I'm going to bring this up. I don't know if you're going to remember or not, but we lose to Ansonia. It's the varsity game. After the game, in the locker room, Mr. Alu gets up and he says, I want to applaud Jemal for what a great practice he had this week. He goes, we really don't have anything that can prepare you guys for Dennis or Jason Tinney. But Jemal was the closest thing we had, and he worked so hard. So I think you guys should clap and give Jemal. That had to be a great feeling.
I do remember that because I did practice hard.
Right.
Part of me practicing hard, I wanted to play.
Right.
So I wanted to show them that I wanted to play. So we were running all of Ansonia plays.
Yeah.
And I was killing them.
And if you think about it, Ansonia won the game, but Tinney really didn't do much that day.
I think what was it, 8-0?
8-0. Yeah. It was on a little quarterback sneak.
Yes.
So they held Tinney, and Alu's right in the sense that what you did in practice that day was great. But listen, everybody likes to be recognized for some things. Yes. It had to be nice to hear Mr. Alu because he could be tough in practice.
He was one of the toughest. He yelled all the time. I don't think I've ever heard him talk.
Right, but after games, if you did something well in practice, he made sure he recognized it. Even though Derby lost that day, it's not a good feeling. It had to be a good feeling to hear a coach like that say that about you.
It was, but to be quite honest, the seniors, the captains, Dave and Roman, he used to come up to me.
Sean Bittman,
Yes, he used to come up to me after every practice in the locker room, or he would say, hey, Jemal kicked our butts again. So if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be having a good practice, or we wouldn't learn these plays. So he was my motivation too, because I could tell
he was a coach on the field.
Yes,
he really was.
He was.
And
I can remember some of the players kind of being annoyed with me because I was making him look bad, like Mike Thompson. I hope you're listening. We ran. So every time we would run a play and I would beat them, they would make us run it again. So they knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And this dude, I'm going to pay him back too. He hit me in the back on the screen. You know it's coming.
Yeah.
And then I think Alu yelled at him.
Yeah. Mike's a great guy.
Yeah.
But he, in the heat of battle, he could get dirty a little bit.
Oh, yeah. That's my boy.
Yeah. That great kid. So now, you finish that sophomore season. Derby has a great year because people picked them to go 3-7. It was actually a reversal. They went 7-3.
7-3. Yeah.
But now, I mean, unless, somebody told you otherwise, coming into your junior year, you're probably going to be one of the backs, you and Joey Cabral.
Yes.
What did you do in the off season other than weightlift to prepare yourself? What would you say, you wanted to do as far as that?
That's all I did.
Right.
I just lifted.
And you still played
I
basketball.
I still play basketball, but my main focus was I got hooked up with Coach Jadek.
Yes.
He taught me a lot about lifting.
He's a good conditioning guy,
He's a good
too.
conditioning guy.
Right.
And I just trained with him. I just trained hard all day, every day.
Right.
There was waking up.
No, he's
training.
a great guy, and he really knows his stuff. And now, basketball season that year, Derby did not have a good year, obviously. They went 1-19. But midway through the season, you had to kind of be in the starting lineup. You didn't expect that. You were playing JV, and then Joe Cabral wasn't able to play the rest of the season, and you kind of had to take his spot. Any nerves with that, or did you embrace it because you're getting a chance to play?
I just embraced it because football prepared me for a lot in terms of being on that stage.
Right.
So when it came time to play basketball, it wasn't no different than, just competing.
Right.
I just didn't want to mess up and lose the ball.
Right. Though, it really is amazing, though, to think about it, that you never really played for an organized team till 8th grade. Yeah. Now your sophomore year, you're in the starting lineup midway through the season. I mean, that you have to be dedicated. That doesn't happen without commitment and dedication.
Yes.
So had to be a great feeling for that as well.
Yes, absolutely. It was a really good feeling.
Right. One of the things about that season, I'm sure you remember, is Derby won one game, and we had to take a ride all the way up to Granby. I think Jocko got everybody lost. He got the bus driver lost.
Yes, I remember that.
And it was like a 2.5-hour ride to get there to play the game. It would have been a horrible feeling to lose a game like that when you travel that far. But that's one of the things you could look back, tell your son stuff like that, stories like that, because they are fun to tell later that you went all the way up to basically Massachusetts to win a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, things like that you can't put a price tag on.
No, you can't.
So now sophomore year with track, Buster Jadek takes over as head coach. I believe Joe Mazzanti took over as the distance coach.
How do you remember all this stuff?
It's just, it's there.
Like,
man.
Seriously, I'm looking at you. I'm like, how are you? You have nothing written down. All right, go ahead.
But anyway, your sophomore year, I remember you qualified for states again. I think you even got to do the opens, if I'm not mistaken. Just talk about that second season, because I really felt, I remember a couple of us, we were like, God, this kid may go to the Olympics someday. I mean, did you ever have goals like that for track?
No, it was just showing up and just doing the best you can do. I was always competing with myself, so I never felt good enough.
Right.
I just never felt good enough. So it was literally just competing against myself every day.
Did you feel like you were stronger that year, like as far as running went and stuff?
No, I didn't. I probably was, but I definitely was, but I didn't feel as if, okay, I got this. No, it was never that. I never had that attitude. I always had that, I got to get better. There was always somebody better than me.
Right.
And I knew them.
Talk about Buster a little bit. You said he always trained you, but what has he meant to you as a person, just in general?
He was so everything I remember back in high school, he was there. Whether I lost a game, he was there. Whether we won a game, he was there. Whether I got injured, he was taping my ankle. Whether I'm in the off season, he's making sure that I'm lifting, or in conditioning. So the guy met a lot of that stuff I take with me today.
Right.
And I contribute, a lot of my success to people like him, Ronnie Leno, Mascola, Oko, DeCenzo. So
does it amaze you to think, though, that you've been out of high school 21 years and Buster's still coaching? I mean, it's crazy.
It is amazing.
Think,
it is amazing. It's great. I love it, and he looks the same.
Yeah, he just looks like he never ages. It's crazy.
It's great.
So now the football season, you're a junior.
Yes.
A lot of things were predicted for this class. A lot of people thought this class was going to run the table, go 11-0.
Yes.
They start off with a good win against Amity, go 1-0, but then everything just turned south against Sheehan. They get buried 41-7, I believe. What do you think happened with that team? Why do you think that team didn't do what people thought they were going to do?
Well, people forgot, too, that we lost a few players during that time. So we lost...
the Thompson brothers, which was huge.
Yes, and some players didn't go up, like Joe Leza.
I think Joe played that year, but he got hurt, and that was it.
He got hurt, yeah. So I think he probably got hurt before that game. Things just seemed to change a little bit. I don't know what it was.
Right. The team rebounded nice. I mean, they won their last 4, but nobody could have saw that. Now, I could see Cheshire possibly beating that team. They had the McIntosh brothers. They had a great line. I mean, their line
were huge.
Yeah, they were unbelievable. But I think people didn't expect Seymour and Ansonia to roll Derby like they did.
No,
it just,
not.
I mean, do you think the team, you were there, so you know, do you think maybe the guys thought it was going to just happen and, got too overconfident? What do you think?
No, I didn't think they had the confidence. I think when it came down to it, we went in there we play the win, but when it came to game day, I think people kind of got a little nervous.
Right.
People started forgetting assignments. I remember.
Right.
And it was hard. It was hard, and we should have did a lot better that year. I was only playing really one side of the ball. Right. And that's what you want to do. Yeah. You want to be saved as a running back, just playing one side of the ball. So that's all I had to focus on, and I thought we definitely had a great team that year. I mean, we should not have lost as many games as we lost that year.
Right. But let's talk about one game that we won, a game that you were phenomenal in, and that was the Shelton game, Thanksgiving.
Okay.
This was an emotional game for a lot of reasons. Number one, anytime seniors play their last game, that's emotion because this is it for them. This was also Shelton's head coach, Tony Branca's final game. He had announced his retirement.
You seriously remember that?
All right. You're a junior, and you just have a phenomenal game. I think you rushed for over 160 yards that day, had a touchdown. Mike Paquet kicks the winning field goal with about 9 seconds left.
Yes.
What was the feeling like for you when Coach Oko came up to you and said you won the Silver Turkey Award?
I didn't even know what it was. I'm like, what? I won the what? And then I think I got...
You had to go on Cable 10 and talk.
I got the MVP for that as well, player of the game. I didn't know what it was. I was just so happy to win. I didn't think I did anything special. I think I scored 1 touchdown.
You had a lot of yards that day.
But I had a lot. I remember they kept running the same play over and over. I was so exhausted.
It's funny. I was just going to bring that up. You were exhausted, and they're interviewing you on the Cable 10 game, and you could barely talk.
Yes.
Like, you were just like, okay, ask me the questions. I need to get upstairs.
Yes.
But... had to be a great feeling, and it was a great way to go into your senior year. You have this great game, you win the Silver Turkey, and now you know that they ran the table. They were 2-4, they finished 6-4. So it didn't start great, but it ended very well.
Yes, it ended very well. That was a really good year.
Right. So now, a couple days later, maybe a few weeks later, I can't remember, you get named one of the 3 captains. That had to be a great feeling because Derby football has always been, a big thing in the Valley, right there with Ansonia. For you to be named captain of Derby football, what was that feeling like for you?
That all the hard work paid off.
Right.
Because I never slacked when it comes to hard work off the field. So I may not have made every play on the field,
right.
But it was my off the field thing that I was hoping that coaches saw and recognized. But then when I became captain, I was like, okay, what do I do now? Then one of the great captains I know, just Dave and Roman, So I was like, how can I emulate that?
Right. Did you feel like you had to be, because a lot of times of the 3 captains, you were kind of like the voice. You would be the one to speak. The other 2, they didn't like to really talk a lot. So did you feel you had to kind of be the lead captain out there sometimes? Or maybe the bad cop is what I should say.
The bad cop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in people's faces. If you weren't playing, I told you.
Right.
Simple as that. It wasn't a captain thing. It was a player thing.
Right.
So
you definitely have to, and sometimes that's what people don't get is being a captain isn't always fun. But
no, it's not fun.
Sometimes you got to do what you
But I did the same thing as a junior. I did the same thing as a sophomore.
Right.
With my peers, obviously.
Yeah.
So
now, who are some of your teammates that you really enjoyed playing with? What were some of the teammates that you had great relationships with?
I had great relationships with all of them.
Yeah.
I can't even name out one specific, but Joe and I, we came up in the same. We were both in the backfield, so we had a tight bond. Steve Tilkey.
Yeah.
I remember watching him younger than me, well, not younger than me. It just seemed like he was younger because he weighed less. So Pop Warner was a little different. So it seemed like he was younger than me, but it was great watching him playing for him. Everyone, there's not one person that I can't say.
That's the main thing too, is again, the relationships you make with people, because they last forever.
Yes.
Sometimes people get too caught up in the wins, but the wins are only as good as the relationships you make with those people.
Yes. But it's funny because we had all these rivalries, right, with out of town teams and stuff like that. And I can remember being asked to speak at the Shelton Derby luncheon.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so he asked me to come, and I was explaining to the kids. I said, you're looking across the room and you see these guys. I said, to be honest, 10 years from now, these guys are probably going to be your best friends.
Right.
These are the guys that you're probably going to hang out with. These are the guys that you're going to relate with, because even though you kind of hate each other right now, these are the guys you're going to remember. And I all the people from, whether it's Ansonia, Shelton,
and you were
Derby,
friends with
Amity,
a lot of Ansonia kids.
Oh, yeah,
Ron
absolutely.
Tate,
Ron Tate, all those guys.
Art Denby.
Yes,
yeah,
I'm still friends with those guys.
Yeah, and they always kind of respected you. You
Yes.
never see them talk any junk to you during the game.
No,
and stuff
absolutely
like
not.
that. And that's the thing too. Ansonia and Derby hated each other on the field, but
Yes.
there was still that respect where they
Absolutely.
weren't.
Because at the end of the day, we're all kids.
Right.
Being kids.
So now basketball season comes. Derby has a bad year. They go 0-20. I think Joe Borzelli had taken over the program that year. Borzelli, I remember I was like, well, he always seems like a jokester. He's not going to be that good of a coach, but he was a very good coach.
He was a really good coach.
He knew his X's and O's, and he knew how to teach, which was very refreshing. So maybe Derby didn't win many games, but I think you learned a lot more about the game that year playing.
I did.
him.
I learned a lot about the game that year. He was a really good coach in terms of knowing the X's and O's.
Right. I'll tell you a funny Joe Borzelli story, though, and I think you got to remember this. Senior year, I believe, he tears his Achilles heel. He's doing a drill, and I think you went up to him and go, "Are you all right?" And he yells at you and goes, "No, I'm not all right."
That's right.
And you said, "Here, I'm going to help you up," and he goes, "No, don't touch me."
Yes, that's right.
But I mean, it was a shame it happened back then, but you look back, and those are like, things that are, once like it's over with, you could laugh about it. I mean, that was kind of funny because
Yes.
I thought he was faking at first.
I thought he was too. 'Cause
Yeah.
he just jumped. He was hopping on one leg and he falls on the ground like. What
And then when he just said, "No, I'm not all right," and I remember you said to us, you go, "Boy, I feel stupid."
Yeah.
So it was Borzelli was a good guy. I mean,
Yes,
he
he
really was. So senior year comes for football, and it was not a good year.
Nope.
Derby went 3-7. A lot of things happened. You talked about Joe Leza. Joe decided not to come out that year. He wanted to concentrate on baseball. If you look at the freshman class, though, and compare it to the senior class, so many guys did not return. Sean Kekax didn't come back.
Nope.
John Burdacki didn't come back. Yep. Danny Ocado. I'm missing some other guys.
Yes.
Mike Ridzi. So there were not a lot of seniors that year. And other than Rob Anicelli, that line was very small.
Very small. I was bigger than some of our line.
Right. So, I mean, it was how rough of a year was that for you personally? Because you're a competitor and you're trying to go out there. And I remember you had gotten hurt at least a few times that year because you're playing both sides of the ball. And your ankle just would not cooperate with you.
I mean, I was in the backfield. We switched to the eye that year instead of running the wishbone. I wish we would have did that a couple years earlier.
Right.
I was playing outside linebacker. I was punting.
And
I was kicking off.
I was kicking extra points.
And I was kicking extra points. So I
now,
was scoring like a 7-yard touchdown.
Too?
I used the shoe, so I was have to come off the sideline, go get my shoe, and then kick my own extra point.
Right. I mean, you're never going to say you want to be off the field, but was it tough playing both ways when you're constantly on the field like that?
Well, I felt like I had to play both ways.
Right. So
like
there's no option.
There was no option. If nobody else could do what I needed to do, and whether it was defense or offense or kicking or whatever.
Right. I look at that team, though, and I see it. Maybe there might be one game Derby could have won that year, but if you look at everything else, they were just outmanned, and the teams were just so much better because they had so much more depth than Derby really had. And I mean, you and Joe Cabral, like I said,
we played it.
You guys had to will your way into the end zone. It was just
I was carrying people.
Right. It was a rough year in general. But I mean, did you look back on it and not dwell on it and say, I had a great time playing. I can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It wasn't. At the end of the day, it really wasn't about the wins. It was just playing.
Right.
So.
Now, did you have an idea when your season ended that this might be your last game? Did you want to continue playing at the collegiate level?
Well, that year was a tough year because my mother passed away my senior year. So that created a lot of doubt and confusion for me because she was a single parent. I had lost my mother, but the town, the team, the coaches.
Yeah.
Even though it was like one of my worst moments, I look back and it's still kind of one of my greatest because I had so much support that I was overwhelmed with support. So a couple colleges, they were trying to hold. They knew that my mother passed away, so they wanted to hold my scholarship open for me to play at the next level. But I just didn't have the passion anymore. When my mother passed away, unfortunately, I just didn't have the passion to play football anymore.
Yeah, well, you probably, your mind is just not on sports.
No.
It can't.
I was young.
And you had a young brother too, so
Yes,
I mean, there's just different things.
Yeah.
So, again, you had a good senior year. I mean, you had a lot, you had quite a few touchdowns, even though Derby didn't have a good year. So like I said, it didn't end maybe, record-wise the way you wanted, but you definitely had a good career. You can't look back and say, well, I didn't have it was a great career.
It was a great career. I developed a respect, even though when we lost, people didn't want to tackle me.
Right.
They didn't want to tackle me.
No, I don't think people liked being blocked by you either.
No. So it wasn't, I gained the respect that I wanted and I deserved. So that's how I look at it.
So now Jemal Baskins graduates high school. And you did a few things after high school. I think for a while, weren't you involved with Griffin Hospital for a while?
Yes, I worked as an ER tech.
Right. How was that? That had to be difficult, huh?
That was difficult, but that's when I grew up. I saw a lot of things.
So it gave it. Let me ask you, was that working there? Was that why you decided you wanted to be a police officer? Just seeing things like that?
No, the reason I wanted to become a police officer because some of our coaches as freshmen, they were police officers.
Right.
So I kind of wanted to be like the,
Tom D'Onofrio, John
Dorsch.
Yeah.
Those guys were great.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to do what they did. Coach.
Right.
Be a police officer, do things like that.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, when you got out of high school, down the road, you started bodybuilding a little bit, right? Talk about that a little bit. What was that like?
Well, after high school, even though I didn't play any sports, I still liked to lift. That was my outlet.
Right.
So I lifted all the time. And then one day this guy told me, hey, you should try bodybuilding. I'm like, I'm not getting on stage. There's no way.
Right.
So anyways, I decided to do it after months and months of this guy asking me. I didn't prepare for it. And I went and I won. I said, wow, I won. I didn't even do anything. So then I just continued for like 10 years. And,
really?
I competed in natural bodybuilding where they drug test you, they polygraph you. So that's why I continued because I was natural. And I did well. Up until right before I became a police officer, I placed second in the world competition for heavyweights. Wow. So
that's great. I mean, that's a lot of work, though. You got to definitely dedicate yourself.
Well, the dedication came from high school.
Right. Definitely.
It was in me.
What do you think? I mean, I don't want to go too much into this, but why do you think so many people are taking shortcuts as far as using substances and, steroids and things like that? It's not just bodybuilding. I mean, you see baseball. It's been a big problem.
Well, to be quite honest, people always ask, would you take it? Would you take it? And at that age, I probably would have if I could afford it.
Right.
Because that was the culture. That was the culture. And if anybody says that they didn't think about it, they're lying.
Right.
So with that being said, I couldn't afford it, so I never took it. So if it's not for free, it's not for me. So
there's an upside to
there's an upside, but I'm glad I didn't because then I started educating myself more around it.
Right.
And seeing the effects of it. And it's just, it outlasts.
You look at all those wrestlers that have passed away from doing that stuff. It's crazy.
And at the end of the day, you look good, but you're not really stronger.
Right.
I can remember a kid actually that I was lifting with, he started using. He wanted to take shortcuts. And he did, but it took him almost 2 years, maybe 3 years to get to even close to where I was. And I'm natural. So I said, you know what?
So it really didn't do much for him, and
it
probably affected his health a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, do you have any plans of getting back into bodybuilding or competing?
I'm looking to try to compete again. Like I said, I've been a police officer for 10 years now.
Right.
Right before I became a police officer, I did a show, and that's when I won I placed second in the world competition.
Right.
So I'm 40 now.
Right.
But I'm still lifting, and I'm actually looking to do one more just to get involved with it again and see how I do. I think I'll do well. So.
Right. And now, 20 years later and stuff, I believe you've gotten into coaching. You've been coaching basketball, correct?
I've coached basketball. I coached my son.
Right.
Coached basketball.
Middle school, I believe? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I coached a little bit of everything. I coached soccer.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm teaching kids to run other kids over. So
Now, did you know anything about soccer?
I knew nothing. I had to
No.
watch videos. I had to read some books because I was trying to coach anything that my son wanted to play. So
Right.
t-ball or soccer. Or,
Now, is your son playing multiple sports?
no, he's not a sports kid. Actually, he's
Really?
Just he loves the books.
Well, you know
And
what?
I'm
That's
for
not a
that.
bad thing
No, that's not
either.
a bad thing at all.
No.
He works. He has a job. And,
Right. Is he in high school now?
He's in
or-
high school. He's a
wow,
sophomore.
time goes quick. Huh?
Yeah, definitely.
But how was that? That had to be a thrill to coach your son. I mean, sometimes,
Absolutely.
you know, fathers, they coach their sons. It could be a bad thing, too, because you have to be a little harder on them, and they kind of
Yes.
go back and forth. But was it enjoyable to do?
Yes, absolutely. It was a lot of fun connecting with the kids. I've always worked with kids my whole life anyway, so
Right. Yeah, you'd always work down at the Derby Rec as well, doing
Yes.
stuff like that. So you kind of had...
Ronnie gave me my first job in the summertime. I used to work the what is it called, the picnic grove.
Right over there, yeah.
Me,
That's still popular. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Who else? Shira,
Yeah.
Nikki Piscaneri.
Yeah,
we
a
were
lot
a
of
little,
people
we were a
there,
little
yeah.
team there. We used to work every summer. So that was my
Got
first
any
job.
good Ronnie Leno stories you want to share? I mean,
No.
probably can't.
I
right?
probably can't share those stories. He was always good to me, but I love to see him do things to motivate other people. Let's just say that.
Yeah, right. Definitely. So now, you know, talk about your nephew. You brought him up
Yes.
a little bit. I mean, he's having a pretty good career right now in college.
Yes.
He's a freshman, I believe.
He's a freshman at Auburn.
Auburn,
Yes.
yeah. And he was unbelievable at Sacred Heart.
Yes.
So talk about Mustafa a little bit and the career he's had. It's unbelievable.
Well, he's a good kid. He was a talented kid, but he always worked hard.
Right.
It's funny because my sister always tells him, "Hey, you remind me of your uncle," in terms of his passion, his work ethic. Obviously, skill wise, he's that much better.
Right.
But he's had a great career in high school.
And you went to a lot of games.
I went to
right?
every single game.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Every single game. We never missed a game. Never
Right.
missed, and we still don't miss a game. So we went out to his first game at Auburn, but we watch every game on TV.
And you're still following Sacred Heart too, I believe.
Yes, I go
right?
to some of the Sacred Heart games
Yeah.
as much as I can, because I watched all those players for the past 3 years. So Mustafa,
Right.
I don't know if you knew, he went to Wilbraham and Munson in Massachusetts first as a freshman.
Right.
He played there, and then he's transferred to Sacred Heart at the beginning of his sophomore year.
And I think they only lost one game in his career at Sacred Heart, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Or maybe a couple, but
two.
But they lost to a team out of state.
Out of
I
state,
believe.
yes.
Right.
Like the number 5 team in the country.
Right. You know,
yeah.
sometimes you could have a great high school career and it
Yes.
doesn't really turn into a college career.
They
But
lost by 1 too.
right.
game.
Yeah. That was a great game. But he has proven that he's the real deal because
Yes.
he's doing it on a collegiate level. And
Yes.
Auburn's a big time school. I mean, it may
Yes.
not be Duke or North Carolina, but it's definitely a big time Division I college
Yes.
program.
He's playing against good players.
Right.
playing against
How
some
is
of the
that to
players.
watch him play college ball? That's got to be a blast, huh? Because to me, college is better than the NBA.
Yes, it is.
The
Yes,
game
it is.
itself. I
Yes,
mean,
it
the
is.
NBA, I used to love it, but it's not the same game. College is really fun to watch.
It's a lot of fun. It's fun to watch him develop. You know, he has good games here. He doesn't have maybe the best game that he want to play, but as a family, all of us we're just enjoying the ride in terms of seeing him grow.
Right.
Because it's a different level in terms of people think it's all about just the sport, but there's a lot of politics behind.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You know, high school sports, there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of, when you're at that level, when you
Right.
get to his level playing in college, there's a lot of politics. And if anybody watched the Auburn game, you could see the politics.
Right. Now, let me ask you, I'm sure you talked to him a lot.
Yes.
Did he have like some growing pains in the first like couple practices and stuff like that? It's a new system, you know, it's college and he's a scholarship, so they
Yes.
kind of could treat you how they want because, you know, they're paying for your education. I mean, did he
Yes.
have any like reservations when he first started?
No, because he's always played, he traveled, besides just, people think he just played high school. No, he traveled with Adidas. He traveled with
Right.
Nike. He's been across Europe. He's been everywhere in terms of playing at different levels. So when he got there, he's the big man on campus now because he's their first 5-star player. So
Right.
he had to fill those shoes. And initially, he was a little nervous,
Right. Which is
a little bit of
normal.
doubt. Like,
You're a kid,
okay,
yeah.
am I going to be able to do this? And he's proven that he can because I think they're up to 22 games. He had a double every single game in terms of double
Wow.
digits.
So that's awesome. So now let's talk about you. I mean, you've been doing great things over, as you said, the last 10 years, a Naugatuck police officer.
Yes.
Talk about being a police officer, because to me, they kind of get criticized for things they shouldn't, because people don't see day in and day out what they do. And every day, they're putting their life on the line. They're protecting whatever town they're working in. They're protecting that town.
Yes.
So how has that been for you?
When I first became a police officer, it was great. Everybody loved us.
Right.
Nowadays, nobody really likes us, and it's because of the media,
Right.
social media.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to do with what's happening on the other side of the country. Not necessarily on this side, all those things happen in terms of all the big issues that are going on that's being put out on social media. We don't see the type of things that are happening over there in terms of the South, Midwest. East Coast, I think we're doing a pretty good job. It is tough. It is very tough. It's very tough. I can't even... The job is tough in itself because I see a lot. And we have hearts too. So when we see people going through their struggles, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's poverty, it's tough to see people go through.
And you
these
can kind of
things.
relate to it because
I can relate. Totally
you
relate.
grew up with a lot
exactly,
of
and I've seen it, or I have friends that are going through it. So to see people struggle the way they do, and I still have to do my job when it comes to certain things, it kind of sucks sometimes. It sucks arresting people all the time.
Right.
It kind of sucks giving that person that ticket, or making that DWI arrest, or anything, or that somebody stealing food from Walmart. Like what do you do?
Right.
Now, some people are stealing food so they can sell it to the bodegas and get some money, which I found out later. That's the new thing. But others are just trying to feed their families, or clothe their children.
Now, you definitely have to be thick-skinned to do that job, correct? I mean, as much as you want to have,
as much as we say that we're all thick-skinned, we're not.
Right.
We
so
hold
you
up.
take it
We
with
hold
you.
up for for that time period. But at some point, we all have our moments where we think, I'm fortunate to be in the position I'm in.
Right. But
to have a job.
No regrets as far as doing it, right?
Absolutely not.
You definitely feel like you make a difference every day. Even if for, everything they might attack police officers with, there's things they do that people see. That's got to be the most rewarding thing is, helping somebody who you could try to help.
If we just turn off the TV a little bit and not look at social media, especially us as police officers, you could ask anybody that I've either arrested or dealt with or stopped or gave a ticket. Nobody could really say anything bad about me. So I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And a lot of my friends are doing the same thing as far as my coworkers. So,
right. Yeah. So where do you want to be in the next 10 years? I know it's kind of
retired.
Retired.
I'm also I'm a firearms instructor.
Oh, okay.
I've been on the SWAT team for the past 7 years.
And how's that going?
I'm getting old. I don't know if I want to do this anymore. So I'm what you call the door guy. So I break doors.
Right. Let me ask you, what message would you give to, whether it's sports, students, whatever it might be, what message would you give today's kids as far as, whether they're playing sports, trying to get an education, stuff like that? What would you encourage them to do the most?
Would I encourage them to do the most? That's kind of a broad question. I mean, there's so much to everything. I mean, because whether I'm dealing with the youth, I deal with the youth a lot.
Right.
They want me in the schools, but I'm not going into the schools.
No.
It's a different time.
Right. But you do speak at a lot of schools.
I do speak at a lot of schools.
You've done a lot with the social media and that aspect, right? And that to me, that's got to be one of the things that you really get out of the job is you're able, maybe 30 kids it'll go in one ear and out the other. But if you get like 5 that are listening, you helped 5 kids, that's got to mean something.
Yes. I also teach, I run a program, the Police Explorer program. My son is involved where I help kids learn about police work and try to get them involved in community events and try to help them get into college.
I think Ansonia years ago had a program. It didn't last, but I think years ago they had an Explorers program.
I think they want to start it up again. It's a great program.
Right.
Like I've been doing it for the past 6 years. And I finally have kids that are actually, because I had them when they were like in middle school, and now they're going off to college. And I had this one kid who was my captain, and he got into a military school.
Oh, wow.
Because he was in my program. Obviously, he was getting good grades. He was an athlete as well. But one of the main things was because he was in my program, because we teach the kids a lot when it comes to criminal justice. So I also teach at the police academy as well. So I'm a certified instructor. So I try to teach these kids a lot about the job. But it's not necessarily about the job. It's about doing what you want to do. But I think everybody should know law when it comes to it, just be an
Right.
everyday citizen.
I think the teachers that taught at Derby, most of them are retired, but I think if they were hearing this today, they would smile because, you know what? In high school, you mentioned you goofed around a little bit, did this and that, but look what you're doing today.
Yeah.
And I got to believe that some of those teachers you had in high school had an impact on how you do things today, and that's got to say something.
Absolutely. I mean, because every teacher, coach, even parents of the kids that I played with, they all had an impact on me because they were all supportive of everything that you did or that you wanted to do. So they always believed in you. So my thing was I have to do something because I have so many people that believe in me to do something. Because even though I lost, it seemed at the moment everything that I didn't have no future in terms of where I was going. I'm glad where I ended up. So
Right. And I think what you're doing is great. I really applaud you. I mean, you were a great athlete, and you're an even better person because of the things you're doing today. And I really want to thank you for coming on today. It was
I
a
want to
pleasure.
thank you for having me. I mean, thank you for doing stuff like this because I listen to your podcast. But one of the, like I said, I take from everything. And I enjoyed playing with you because you had dedication that was, even though I was a little, remember that time I hit you in the gym?
Oh, yeah.
I ran you over. I gave him a concussion.
Yeah.
But you may not have the strength or the speed, but you were probably the most dedicated. You matched my dedication in terms of wanting to be there, wanting to play hard, and I think you probably wanted it more than I did. So I appreciate you, for what you've done in your high school career. Because we played together.
Oh, yeah.
In every sport. You ran track too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. We played
all the time.
Yeah, we played together all the time. So
Yeah,
I take that for granted. Tell your dad I said hi, by the way.
Definitely.
So and your dad is one of those parents.
Oh, yeah.
That was at every game. So it was people like him that's sitting on the sidelines for every sport that I looked up to.
It was a great time. It really was.
Yes.
I mean,
Joey Cabril's dad.
Yeah, always taping every game.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I look back and I just, those were great times,
Yes.
and I wish we could see days like that
Joey
again.
Lisa's dad, even though, these.
Yeah, Mike Paquet's
Mike
dad.
Paquet, yeah.
Yeah, it was just, a great time. But again, I mean, thank you for the kind words. That was very nice of you. But I really applaud you because what you're doing today, especially going to the schools and speaking, I think that's the most important thing.
I'm trying.
You're really making a difference. And thank you again for coming on today.
No problem.
And that's the one and only Otis Jemal Baskins for Valley Sports Rewind. I'm Mike Cannici saying goodbye, everyone.